Hello and welcome to the Beauty Chronicles. I'm Meredith Jones, a professor of gender studies who loves popular culture.
And I'm Carla, Meredith's trusty sidekick.
In these Beauty Chronicles, we talk about all sorts of fascinating and sometimes grotesque things to do with cosmetic surgery, media, popular culture, celebrity, and much more. So, if you're confused by the Kardashians or baffled by Botox, this is the place for you. Hi, Carla.
Hi, Meredith. We're back, 2024.
Yeah, 2024. So we had a bit of a hiatus, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
I was busy finishing the Kardashian volume, which should be out mid-year.
Yeah.
So I worked night and day on that for months and got it in, which was absolutely wonderful.
Nice work.
And then I ran away to Australia and Thailand for a while.
That sounds nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm quite excited by today's topic.
Yeah, me too. So we're going to talk about the film Saltburn, written and directed by Emerald Fennell, released 2023. And you and I haven't discussed it yet, except to say, yes, we want to talk about it on the podcast. So I'm really interested to hear your thoughts, really, really interested.
Yeah, well, I have a few, but I'm kind of, I started thinking about it in the context of, beauty, which I hadn't quite done. And it sort of then made me understand certain parts of it a bit more. But I still have a few issues with the film. But do you want to kind of briefly explain, like give a synopsis to people who haven't seen it?
Sure.
And maybe there might be spoilers.
Yeah, there'll definitely be spoilers. So if you haven't seen the film, I do recommend that people see it. I think it's really worth seeing.
Yeah, me too.
But if you don't plan to see it, then yeah, it's a kind of in many ways a typical sort of British film about the aristocracy and the common people, and that phrase comes up in the film in relation to the song that many people will know. So it's kind of along the lines of Brideshead Revisited and The Talented Mr. Ripley. But it takes a very dark turn, not that those two pieces of work don't take dark turns. It takes a very dark turn, and it also, so it's kind of, it's very lush, it's very gorgeous, it's very, very full of upper class beauty, full of expensive, luxurious beauty in the form of environments built and natural, and in the form of human bodies and the sort of adornment of human bodies. Full of lots of interesting discussions about beauty and interesting opinions. But then it really takes a very dark turn with the only non-upper class character basically slowly killing all of the other characters and taking over their lives. But we don't realise that's happened until right at the end. I've watched it twice, and the second time I watched it, it was really fun to look out for all of the things that had signalled that this character all the clues that signalled that Oliver was up to, I don't know if you'd call it no good or maybe up to good. I don't know. I have no judgment about what he did, what the character did. Of course, Oliver is named for Oliver Twist, the Charles Dickens character, who I think says, "Please, sir, I want some more." Because he's hungry.
Yeah, I have questions about the common people. Because I know there's kind of a tradition in the culture of a sort of upper class, lower class dynamic, in literature or stories or whatever. But that's always been kind of like upper class and then working class. Usually dirt rich, dirt poor.
Yeah.
Whereas Oliver's middle class. And
yes, he is.
He's middle class. He's from a nice suburb. He's from suburbia.
Mm.
Like, he's not really working class, and he sort of fabricates a personal story about himself to make it seem like he's working class, but he's not. He's
That's
middle
right.
class.
So,
and I thought
yeah.
that was kind of, I mean, I thought this before I started thinking about it in terms of what his motivation was, and like there's certain things about what happens at the end that doesn't quite make sense in terms of the story development, and also seems like the story could have gone somewhere else that would have been a little bit more, not so flat at the end. But
okay. Oh, interesting that you thought the ending was flat.
it just didn't make sense.
Yeah, it's funny because
it was just so kind of, the rest of the film seemed so rich and pungent with complexity, with who is this really complex character, Oliver, you know, like you kept peeling back onions and you'd see something different and you kind of didn't know. And the world he's in, that kind of lush, decadent, completely out of touch with working class reality. Like, it was so crazy and beautiful, you know, like it seems so deep, and then suddenly it just turns into this, he just wants to be them. He just wants a piece of that. He wants all of that.
I think he wants all of that, but I don't think he wants to be them. He despises them.
But he loves them. He loves them at the same time. This is why I think it was a critique.
He says, I loved them, I hated them.
Yeah,
I don't think he wants to be them. I think that to me, that final, which to me was this sort of final glorious scene, the dance scene at the end, the nude dance scene. I loved that Oliver was all by himself. He didn't want to be them. He didn't need their networks. He wanted their stuff.
Yeah, and that's why it seemed fucking
He doesn't
shallow.
want to be them.
No, but it's like, why do you want their stuff? It's stupid.
Because their stuff is fucking beautiful,
yeah,
but they're a bunch of cunts. You wouldn't want to actually be them.
No, but
like I'll take the stuff and be by myself.
No, you wouldn't. That is so not true.
I would not want their networks.
Would you give up?
Would you really want to sit next to Lady Daphne at a dinner party?
No, but that's kind of like, he had more options than either having their stuff and no one else in his life, or like you wouldn't give up your intimate relationships for stuff. I'm sorry, but you wouldn't.
Oh no, but
right.
I'm not saying that.
That's all he wanted was stuff. He didn't want his boring suburban middle class family, who clearly loved him, were clearly supportive.
Yeah, that's
clearly
right.
very nice people.
And
right? He didn't want that.
But he didn't want the upper class life either.
But
he just wanted the
story developed, the way the story developed, it seemed like he does want some kind of connection with the son, Felix. He fucked his grave, for God's sake. Like, he wanted, like, the story was building up in that way, where he did crave some kind of power and control over some of the people that was very, you know, like, he wanted a relationship there, even though he didn't want to be, he wanted to
not enough
be in charge
to
of
kill them.
I know, it didn't make sense.
He liked them dead. You know, in the final scene when they're all little puppets in the little puppet theatre thing he's got of them. That's the way he liked them. He'd like them just as little artifacts. There needed to be
more signals about his desire for the stuff rather than his desire to somehow have a relationship.
See, that would have given it away. If you saw him desiring the stuff, you would have known what the ending would be. So I don't think
it was a very good ending.
Yeah, I just loved the ending. I don't care if it wasn't logical.
I feel, because the woman that made the film,
dancing with Oliver, I really was.
Okay. I think you're really more into beauty than I am, though. This is kind of interesting, because the beauty stuff, I'm just like, oh, this is just Baroque, crass. Like,
well, this is our typical conversation.
I know, it is.
Why we have such good conversations.
But also, I
say so myself.
Yeah. I thought, like, I think my disappointment in the story ending in such a kind of two-dimensional, in a way, it was sort of like predictable in the sense that that's the conventional story. That's the story we know. That's the talented Mr. Ripley
Mm,
story.
mm.
That it just could have been more interesting and complex, but I felt like in the end it was just a bit of a swipe at the middle class. Because when you think about it, the aristocracy, and the filmmaker is posh,
Yes, yes,
right?
she's very
So
posh.
she's experienced and knows that world, and like her family of friends, the people that own that fucking house, and like, you know,
Yeah,
so
that's right.
she's super posh.
I mean, Emerald Fennell's 18th birthday was in Tatler magazine, and for people who aren't English, that's like the society magazine. So that's just an indication of how very posh and established this filmmaker
Yeah,
is.
the whole, there's always sort of like this sense of community in the aristocracy, and the stories, you know, always versus the working class, and there's always community in the working class.
Yeah.
But Oliver wasn't into community because he's middle class, and because the middle class are just into themselves and into social climbing.
Yeah, I think we could say that Oliver showed most contempt for his own class.
Yeah.
Right? He wanted the stuff of the upper classes, the extreme upper classes. He also, in a way, wanted he wanted the cultural capital of the working classes, which was why he
Yeah.
pretended that
Yeah.
his parents were drug addicts and that he
Yeah.
came from terrible poverty and that he'd had to help his mother. He'd had to put his fingers down his mother's throat to make her vomit so that she wouldn't choke on her own vomit later on. And of course, there's links with that to the other kind of the lines about vomit, you know, about when Elspeth says that her daughter Venetia has bulimia and partakes of the two-finger pudding, a phrase I've never heard before,
Yeah, I
to
mean,
the
that's pretty
two-finger
funny.
pudding, but I just love that one. Bulimics rejoice. Yeah, I think that Oliver does have a lot of contempt for the middle classes. Yeah.
And the other thing I didn't understand was like when Felix finds out the truth, he doesn't do what you would do, which is just kick the fucker out. Like, it doesn't
Well,
make
he
sense.
explains, well, remember that Felix has a mother who can't abide nastiness or ugliness and who has organised this enormous party in honour of Oliver. And that party happens the night that Felix has found out the truth about Oliver. And
Yeah,
Felix
okay.
actually says to Oliver, "You're going tomorrow. I hate you. You make my blood run cold. You're going to leave tomorrow, but we'll get through the party first." And I think he's doing that for his mother's sake and because she has this horror of anything ugly. You know, she says that herself. And of
But she
course,
wasn't, she was happy to ditch the fucking her friend
yeah,
who'd
they only
overstayed her
they
welcome.
hang on to these extra people in their lives while they're decorative and fun.
Yeah.
But you know, this party's about decoration and fun. So I think Felix is just thinking, we'll get through it. Oliver will go the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Felix doesn't survive the night.
Anyway, I did think it was like someone from the upper classes having real terror of the middle class, because the middle class
Interesting.
really are just this sort of empty version of themselves
There was
without
nothing
community.
probably more ugly nothing more, not ugly, but more boringly aesthetic in the whole film than the visit to Oliver's family home,
Yeah, it
that
was,
middle
yeah,
class home with
yeah,
its gone fishing thing that hung on the front door or
yeah.
next to the front door, gone fishing or whatever it said. This sort of slightly kitsch middle class aesthetic was utterly horrifying to him.
Mm.
But kind of endearing and cute to Felix, because remember Felix kind of stroked that little sign as they entered the house.
Yeah, because there's kind of human emotion there and love.
Felix
And
was
that,
a genuine character, I think. He was a character who, you know, although completely trapped in his own class and you know, one of the most privileged people on the planet, had some empathy, had some real empathy. Did come to Oliver's rescue the couple of times that Oliver lied about about tragedies that had happened, Felix was there. And of course, the name Felix just means happy. So he was the kind of one almost genuinely happy, kind of pure character, I think, and hence his angel wings in the scene that he died.
Do you think the reason Americans love the film so much is because it's about the middle class winning, acquiring what this upper class that they're all a bit fascinated with anyway have?
Well, it's pretty anti-American, you know. Sir James says, I don't want your, he tells Farley, I don't want your American emotions here. Take those American emotions and stick them in your shepherd's pie. Yeah. I think things I'd like to talk about. Here's the quote from Elspeth. So she says when she meets Oliver, I have a complete and utter horror of ugliness ever since I was very young. We could talk a bit about.
We can all relate to that.
Absolutely. It just depends what your version of ugly is.
Exactly.
I mean, ugliness is horrifying to anyone. It just
ugliness is in the eye of the beholder.
Indeed. We can talk about people as animals. We've done that a little bit already, I think. We can talk about class. We've done that a bit already. But I'd really like to talk about sounds.
Okay.
In the film, ugly sounds and beautiful sounds.
Okay.
So I've never really thought before about this kind of sound effect that was in this film. But I watched it for the first time in the cinema and I was alone. And in the what is the first? So the first really, there's a lot of slurping in this film. A lot of slurping and licking and sucking, and it's all very, very sound effecty. The first time you get it is when Oliver slurps up the remains of Felix's bath water and puts his tongue down the plug hole. Now, this is not just any old bath water, is it, Carla?
No.
Do you want to give the spoiler?
It's the bath water that Felix, while he's bathing, masturbated into.
Yep. So Oliver's watched Felix through a crack in the door as Felix masturbates and comes into the bathwater. And then Oliver sneaks into the bathroom as the water's going down the drain hole and licks it up. When that happened, when I was in the cinema, people were screaming.
Were
like
they?
People behind, well, not in a really, really
not
loud
in an
way.
American emotional way.
No, not like it was a horror movie, but they were like, no. And to me, that was the turning point for the movie. That's where I knew I was probably going to really enjoy it. Now, that's particularly kind of pertinent for me personally, because I have a condition called misophonia. And this is a condition where certain sounds create a really out of control, out of character emotional response, which is very often anger. As a child, I suffered with misophonia terribly, always around eating sounds, but a little bit around anything gurgling, so I couldn't stand the sound of the bathwater going down. But mostly my poor brothers, I feel really sorry for them now. I could not stand the sounds of my brothers eating. And I didn't have a word for it. I didn't know why it was. It used to drive me almost into a murderous rage. And it was not till I was, maybe till about 20 years ago, I found out there was a name for it, misophonia. There's all sorts of theories about why people might have it. But for me, when I first had my baby, I realised that I could not live with misophonia and a baby.
Too much slurping.
because babies make those sounds
They
from the
gurgle.
minute they're born. Yeah.
Mm.
So I forced myself out of it. I really, really made myself stop hating those sounds.
Mm.
And although now I definitely notice them, they don't drive me into a murderous rage.
You don't have to kill anyone.
I don't have to kill anyone. I don't even have to comment. And I can sit there and listen to them. It's fine. So for me, that first slurping scene, because I've never really heard it in a movie before, and not with surround sound, it just brought all that back, and all that visceral disgust and that incredibly strong affect. And it really made me think that, and a couple of the other sound scenes as well, about how sounds can be beautiful or not. And those slurping, sexual, slapping, sweaty kind of sounds are kind of both. And maybe that's why people have a horror of them in some ways. They're horrifying, but they're also about sex and about intimacy and about nourishment and potentially about beauty. So yeah, I found the sound stuff incredible in that scene in particular, and then in the menstrual blood scene.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Uh, and I don't.
I was watching on kind of like at home via computer with a shitty speaker, so I may have missed the full impact.
Well,
I didn't
I've
have the
been
surround
telling
sound
people do see it at the cinema.
at the cinema, yeah.
And they think that that's because of the gorgeous visuals. And of course, yes. But the surround sound, I really think, is something.
They did do something interesting with the visuals. When we started watching it, I was like, oh, why is it kind of in this weird format? It looked like it had been shot for old style TV before widescreen, because it's in a sort of a less wide format. It's still it's sort of an older style cinema format. So the pitch is actually taller than widescreen, and they did that because they wanted to fit more of the, like, I was like, is this actually how it was shot, or are we watching some pirated weird version? They did it intentionally. They wanted to have more screen real estate above the heads of the characters so they could include more of the architecture and give a sense of how imposing the architecture was. Whereas if they'd shot it in kind of 16:9 ratio, they would have lost that when they were kind of, pushing in for close-ups and stuff.
I love that. I love that you did that bit of research. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
We do have to look upwards when we're looking at when we're looking at incredible wealth. It'll take our eye upwards.
Yeah. And just to capture a sense of those buildings and the palace, like all of it, you sort of need to, like it's hard enough to capture a sense of their scale.
You've just reminded me, and I've as you've been speaking, I've been thinking, should I say this or not? But I think I can say it. It's a weird little aside, but relevant to the Beauty Chronicles. So it's because you used the phrase real estate, and lately on makeup bloggers,
so middle class of me.
Yeah.
Sorry,
But lately on makeup, but you used it in relation to screen, so screen real estate. And lately I've been watching some, YouTuber makeup artists, and they talk about eyelid real estate. So that is the difference. If you close your eye, that's the measurement between the bottom of your eyebrow and your first eyelash. Now, lots of people, you and I, I'm looking at us both now. We've both got quite a lot of eyelid real estate.
We've got a lot, especially if we put our eyebrows up high.
Oh, yeah, well, that's cheating. Although you can use Botox to lift them higher, which is one of the discussions. But the more eyelid real estate you have, the more colours, eyeshadow you can sort of stick on there. So there you go. There's all sorts of real estate.
You know whose eyelid real estate I've been kind of transfixed by?
Don't tell me. Can I guess?
Yeah.
Not Kylie Jenner.
No.
Oh, okay. All
I
right.
barely even know who Kylie Jenner is.
Oh,
No, you
oh,
may
oh,
not
oh,
guess.
what? Okay.
Anyway, no, I do know who she is. You explained it to me in one of our previous episodes.
Mm.
Claudia Winkleman's what is it? Eyelid real estate. Do you know who
Ooh.
she is?
No, I've got to
Might
look
have
her
to.
up.
She is she
Oh,
hosts The Traitors, the
she
reality
has
TV.
hardly any. Yeah, because she has hardly any, right?
Yeah, because she's got this look where she's got a fringe. Her shtick is a bit like a cross between Morticia and Wednesday from the Adam
Oh, yeah.
Family. And her wardrobe's fabulous, but she
Ah,
has often just a hardcore black around her eyes.
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
she has a very her eyelid look is quite anti-zeitgeist
mhm,
because she has what makeup artists call hooded eyes, which means that she doesn't really have hooded eyes. It means your eyelid comes down quite far. So not a lot of eyelid real estate. And what they all say, to give the illusion that you've got more real estate, what you want is avoid dark all around the eye and, all these kind of little aesthetic tricks that will supposedly open up the eye. And Claudia Winkleman does the opposite, which is pretty powerful, and she looks pretty amazing.
yeah, she looks pretty good.
Yeah.
You could see her in Saltburn somewhere.
Well, she's not posh at all.
No,
I think she can play posh characters.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's a little bit posh.
You reckon?
Maybe not the top echelons.
By English standards, she's not posh, but, I will still never really understand what posh is in this country. Because
Yes,
in Australia, like, you're posh if you wear long trousers instead of shorts.
that's not true. Come on. Depends on the shorts, baby.
Oh, that's true. Shorts can be super posh. Have you heard of the Skort?
Is it like a kilt?
No, it's a mix. It's a pair of
Culottes?
shorts, but with a skirt around it.
Okay.
So you can wear. They look really great. You can wear what is essentially a really short skirt, but there's no chance of your undies showing.
Oh, this is not for blokes, but for women.
Yeah, it's more a women's thing, but of course men could wear Skorts if they want.
Mm.
Yeah, but the two that I've seen have been on women, and they've both looked fabulous.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we can put a link to some Skorts in the podcast description.
We could start a Skort business.
I'm not skorting.
I don't want
I'd find the skirt part annoying. I'd be like, I don't need
you
this
just go
skirt
the
section.
shorts.
Yeah. Stay with shorts.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to
back to Saltburn.
Saltburn.
One of the very early scenes is a scene at Oxford with Oliver and Farley, who are the two kind of outsiders who end up in the home. But Farley is related to the people who live there, and Oliver's not. And they're in a tutorial at Oxford. And Oxford has this way of teaching where you read out your essays in class.
Is
But
that really how they do it? Or is
it
that just
is.
kind of bullshit?
It is, yeah. I mean, I could talk for hours about that.
No wonder the fucking British government can't function. This is how they're all educated. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't think you really get educated at Oxford. I think you just swan around. Which is exactly what the tutor tells Oliver to do. When Oliver turns up having done his homework, read the 50 pieces and written an essay, but Farley, who's unquestionably upper class, hasn't read anything. The tutor is very much more enamoured with Farley, and basically tells Oliver, you're an idiot for having done all this work. He says, even I haven't read all those books.
Can anyone who anyone who listens to this, if you do know about how people get educated at Oxford, can you just confirm that that is in fact a realistic representation?
We'll
Because
have
if it
to
is, it
we'll
explains
have
a
to
lot.
let people put comments in then.
Well, they can email us.
Oh, okay. Email us, please.
What's the email address? I'll put it in the description. It's like Beauty Chronicles
Chronicles
Pod
something or other
at gmail.com.
We'll put it in the link.
I think
Anyway,
I know
back
it.
to that tutorial. The first time Oliver reads out his essay, it's about a Robert Browning poem, which is called My Last Duchess. And there's music going over the top of it, and there's a montage of Farley and the tutor kind of having a great time. So we don't really hear what Oliver's saying. But I went and looked at that poem, and it's pretty much a poem. It's a poem written by Robert Browning about a very rich man who is showing someone around his house, showing them all his artifacts in exactly the way that Felix later showed Oliver, and in the way that Oliver kind of shows us in the final scene. But this aristocrat, a duke, stops at one of the portraits in his home, and it's a portrait of his dead wife. Rumor is, or ancient rumor, that he had her poisoned, and because it is based on real people, that he's Alfonso, the Duke of Ferrara. And there's this line in the poem that he gave commands, then all smiles stopped together. And those are the commands he gives when he has realized that he doesn't actually love or like his wife anymore. So the implication is that he had her killed. And after that, the poem continues, and he continues to show us around more of his artwork. So she's moved from being a living creature to being a living human, to being an artwork. And I thought that, I mean, apart from the really obvious link that, of course, that's Elspeth, she's the Duchess, there are also links about turning complicated, unsatisfactory, disappointing humans into artifacts. And that is precisely what Oliver does with them all. But mind you, if he hadn't done it to them, they would have done it to him.
Well, they wouldn't have killed him. They just would have sent him back to his boring suburbia.
Well, they effectively killed Pamela. They would have
that's
killed
true.
him in
Yeah,
a different
she
way.
did kill herself after she went back.
She killed herself because they rejected her. So yeah, they would have killed him. There's all sorts of ways
but
of
she
killing.
did kill herself.
Yeah, no.
Like, come on.
Metaphorically, they killed her. I think I really liked Oliver, and I think you really disliked him.
I just didn't understand what the point was. I didn't understand what he wanted. And I think it's true. I think I do not understand why you would want to live in a big fucking house with all those things. Like, it just was really gay. It's like, why do you want all this stuff? Dance around naked in it. Like, you could have had
understand
Felix.
wanting to dance around naked in a beautiful house full of beautiful stuff, snorting cocaine. That's what he wanted to do. That's what he ended up. It was completely superficial. It was completely hedonistic.
Yeah, I just found that boring.
I enjoyed it. No, we've got a good disagreement. We're at two ends of the spectrum here.
It's good. There wasn't enough. It's interesting though, because I was trying to remember how I responded to The Talented Mr. Ripley. I haven't rewatched it or anything since then, but I do remember thinking it was a much more enjoyable watch, and you kind of were on the side of the Ripley character in a way that I didn't feel with this.
Yeah, well, to me, I guess one of the beauties of Saltburn was that it judged everyone very harshly. Maybe apart from Felix, who it did judge as well because he was so oblivious and so happy in himself, so unquestioning of his place in the world. even though he was, a very nice person, a very caring person.
But, maybe I was also just expecting a twist at the end that was as satisfying as in Promising Young Woman.
Yeah.
It was great. It was
She
just
loves
kind of
her
like,
twists, doesn't she?
yeah, the one
Yeah.
at the end of this film, it just didn't kind of make me go, It was just
Yeah, it was, in a
too, it
way,
was
it
like, is
was
that all
a
this is about?
cliched
Is that
twist.
all
Yeah.
this is about? Oh.
Yeah. Well, to me, it matched the focus on surface, the superficialness of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So plot matched aesthetic. What did you think of the nudity in the final scene? Because I've been thinking about it a lot. I've been thinking about Barry Keogh's penis.
I did just think about kind of the veneration of the classical age and, the sort of, like in the Renaissance, all of that kind of those statues of naked men and the sort of harking back to the Greeks, the ancient Greeks and the body and all of that, like the way also how Hitler used all of that stuff as well. In
Absolutely.
the whole kind of
the power of the kind of phallic body.
yeah, and the characterization of sort of the Aryan ideal, like this kind of ideal.
Which in many ways Barry Keogh didn't fit
No,
physically.
Felix did.
Felix
Right.
did, yes.
The way he was shot and his
That's
actual
right.
body. And so, yeah. But he also doesn't have a bad body.
Barry Keogh.
Yeah.
No, but it is shot so that he looks a good foot shorter than Felix, which I think the actors may not have that much of a difference.
Yeah, but you don't get that in the last scene where he's dancing around the place.
No, that's right. He's fully in his own. His body belongs there suddenly.
Yeah.
And I loved that they chose to do it nude because it showed that he didn't even need the clothes. The home had become his clothing. Just talking about penis size, and back to Greek and Roman ideals, the reason that, for example, David has what many people would think is a reasonably small penis.
To those who don't understand Italian, that's David.
Yes. Is that small penises were considered to be more intellectual. So if you were an intellectual and an intelligent, urbane man, your penis was small, and large penises were animalistic and rustic and for peasants. So yeah, it was interesting that, who knows whether Emerald Fennell she probably didn't see Barry Keogh's penis before she accepted him for the part, but I thought it was really interesting.
We'll never know.
No, we won't. But it was really interesting that the actor felt comfortable enough to do that.
Because he's a professional.
Yeah, heaps of professionals would refuse to do that.
Not English professionals, come on.
That's
part and parcel of their fucking education. You take your clothes off at some point in a play or, isn't it a rite of passage for actors?
I suppose so.
Equus? There's always some play where you've got to get your gear off.
Yeah. I don't usually enjoy seeing men's genitals.
Okay.
But I really enjoyed that scene, and I was trying to think about why. And I think it's because the genitals were so much part and parcel of the entire scene.
Yeah.
So there was the whole environment. There was his entire body. There was no focus on just genitals.
Yeah.
And that was another thing about the film.
It was very classical. It was
it had all of these
David.
sex scenes with no genitals.
Mm.
And I read that apparently the film was not, though the sex scenes were easier to film than usual because they didn't have genitals, they didn't have nudity, so they didn't need those intimacy coaches. it's amazing if you go back and look that the sex scenes really only show faces.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, and it's a very sexy film.
Yeah, in a somewhat grotesque way, but I guess all sex is grotesque.
Please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right and that's very much connected with eating. So the film's a lot about eating. You know, we spoke about slurping and eating sounds, and if you think about the scene with the eggs where Oliver sends back his eggs,
yeah,
and they come back too runny.
they haven't been over easied.
They haven't been over easy. Well, there's argument about what over easy means, but maybe that confusion was meant to be part of it.
What does
Either
it
way,
mean? I thought it means you turn it over a bit so it's
well,
not so
apparently that's
gooey.
what some English people think, but in America, what he was served is what they call sunny side up.
Yeah.
So he was not served over easy that he
Yeah.
asked for. He
Yeah.
was served sunny side up.
Yeah.
So, but interesting that runny eggs make him feel sick, but he's happy to slurp up a whole lot of semen and menstrual blood in later
But that's
scenes.
because some people are actually allergic to eggs.
I know, but
Like,
I,
it is an allergy,
yeah,
Meredith.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think he has an allergy.
He doesn't have an allergy
I
to
think it was
like
a symbol.
Felix semen or what was her name?
Venetia.
Venetia's menstrual blood.
Yeah, yeah.
Which
So
is really just,
Venetia, of course, is named after the city, which is the sinking wet city. And she's all about wetness, isn't she? From the menstrual blood to the overflowing red wine in the glass after Felix dies, to her own death in the bathtub. Yeah, poor Venetia.
Yeah, like a drowning Ophelia.
Yeah, watery, sinking, drowning Venetia.
What about the dad?
Oh, Hugh Grant. I mean, he kind of
It's not
plays the same
Hugh. It wasn't
character.
Hugh Grant.
Oh, so Hugh Grant, Richard E. Grant.
Richard E.
Sorry. Yeah, it wasn't Hugh Grant. Hugh Grant could have done it though.
He wouldn't have been as good. Come on.
I thought that where he discovers Felix's dead body and just keeps saying, "Where's your jumper? Lift him up. You're cold." I thought that was absolutely beautiful. And then that genius stroke when the director just gets Elspeth to say, "Come away, darling, lunch is ready." And they all sit trying to eat what looks like the worst meal of the whole film, that shepherd's pie. That dry, weird shepherd's pie.
Yeah, because the life
Why?
has gone out of them.
Yeah.
He was their life.
I guess Felix was their life, yeah. The other thing about the final scene, the nude scene, and I thought this was a bit obvious. It's probably one of my only gripe with the movie, was that really obvious connection between Oliver and the Minotaur in the middle of the maze.
Yeah.
You know, the Minotaur with the big phallus and the horns, and Oliver wears the horns at the party. Yeah, that was a bit too obvious for me. But I guess Oliver kind of became the Minotaur, you know. The Minotaur took over the house. The Minotaur left the maze.
Yeah. It's always a little bit dangerous when you put a maze into a film. It's a fairly clunky metaphor.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was a beautiful maze.
It was a beautiful maze, yeah, with a very ugly statue in the middle. And I think, you know, the film was very much about the interplay between beauty and ugliness. Yeah, I think there's a couple of moments where we really see beauty and ugliness intertwined in this movie. And, one is the conversation that Pamela has with Oliver, where she's talking very sadly about the Russian billionaire that she's broken up with. And she says that she doesn't understand Russian. She thought what he was saying sounded very beautiful and sounded poetic, but that was because she didn't know the word for whore. So it's very it's funny, but it's also horrible, and it really shows that, that in very obvious ways, and again in kind of ways to do with sound and to do with language, the mixture between beauty and ugliness.
Yeah, and also that what seems beautiful on the surface might not actually be very beautiful underneath.
Absolutely, yeah. And the other thing is,
which has always been my issue with beauty, frankly.
Carla.
Yeah, sorry, the
so
other
deep.
thing.
And remember the hideous china. So that stuff called Palissy china. It's the china made by Bernard Palissy, 16th century French ceramicist. There's a collection of it in the house, and we find out later that Oliver's gone and looked it up and pretends that he knows it,
yeah, he knows
and
all about
admires it. But I thought there was a very nice image where Farley looks at the stuff and is obviously, the look on his face is, this is really disgusting. This pottery is foul. And if you look it up, it's grotesque stuff. There's,
How do you
there's
spell Palissy?
Palissy, Bernard Palissy. So it's kind of platters with 3D, almost 3D patterns on them of things like worms and eels, as well as vegetables.
And snakes.
They're sort of,
they're disgusting.
Yes, I think they're eels, crustaceans. Yeah, it's pretty ugly stuff, but it's like ugly, beautiful, priceless.
Is it really priceless, this stuff?
I think it is. There's actually no genuine Palissy for sure. It's all just attributed, I think. But it's nice that Farley has this really honest aesthetic response. Oliver by then has quickly learned to believe he likes the stuff and to convey that. And then that's also the means by which he brings Farley down, by making it seem that Farley has tried to sell that stuff to Sotheby's. So that pottery of Bernard Palissy is really ugly, beautiful. I think it's really, really connects those two. It's a kind of grotesquerie almost.
It was
it's
also
pastoral, it's vegetal, it's
lush.
But it's foul, it's disgusting. It's the opposite of minimalist in terms of a plate. Like you couldn't even use them because how could you put anything on it? It's already got the stuff.
You can put fruit in it.
Yeah.
You can put fruit in it. You couldn't eat off it like anything liquid. He was also a hydraulics engineer.
Bernard Palissy.
Yeah, and struggled for 16 years to imitate Chinese porcelain.
Yeah, and ended up doing this rustic stuff instead that sold really well to the upper classes. Ware.
His education did not include Greek or Latin. Maybe this is why he did such ugly fucking plates.
I just wanted to say one more thing about Oliver Keogh's penis.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah. I really liked that the biggest movie of last year, Barbie, ended with a genital scene. And the biggest movie of the two biggest movies of the year, both at the Oscars, Saltburn and Barbie, both ended with genital scenes.
How big was Saltburn? It wasn't bigger than Oppenheimer. It was popular. But yes, you're right. They both did end with actual Barbie genitals.
She'd grown them. She'd grown them when she became human.
Yeah.
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 So
it's all getting more racy, this culture.
Maybe.
Where will it end?
Where will it end? I don't know. I think it was it's a light, fun, hilarious, memorable movie for me.
Yeah, it's definitely worth seeing. Like also as a piece of cinema. Like in the way that Barbie was there were layers of sort of cinematic craftsmanship in Barbie. Yeah. Maybe not in the story, on the story side of things, but yeah, Saltburn's definitely very like as kind of cinema craft, and certainly in a cinema if you hear all the sounds and stuff, which I kind of missed on my crappy little speaker.
Yeah, I really, really recommend.
But it just wasn't quite as clever at the end as I wanted it to be.
I was happy for it not to be clever. I was happy for it to be a bit of a cliche and then just have a beautiful nude man dancing.
Yeah.
But call me shallow.
Yeah, well, that's...
One of my favourite lines is one that was not said by a main character at all. It was in one of the last scenes. It's when Elspeth meets up, we think by accident, with Oliver in the coffee shop, probably in Belgravia, somewhere like that, somewhere she's just bought a little flat. Of course, we find out it hasn't been by accident at all on his part. But of what is the coffee that Elspeth orders and that they call out for her to take away? It's a flat white. You know, that's what she is. That's what the aristocracy is. And there's a little bit about race in the movie, not nearly enough. Farley does call it out a little bit. Felix denies it completely. But Elspeth is the ultimate flat white, I think.
I love that Australians have just become synonymous with coffee.
Well, Australian baristas have taken over every coffee scene, including in Italy.
Yeah, they've taken over everywhere, even Italy.
Yeah.
But very good to see you after this hiatus.
Yeah, we'll get back into it. Maybe we'll do a whole episode about eyeshadow and eyelids.
Okay.
I'm joking, but we could.
Yeah, I feel like we've covered it all in this already.
So to speak.
Is there more?
So to speak.
See you next time. Bye.
Ciao, ciao.